Not even a month in, and this is probably the best blaster of 2025. The X-Shot Pro Series Fury X does so much for so little, it quite frankly will change the landscape of foam flingers forever. This thing is a half-length mag-fed Slamfire-capable bullpup pro-level blaster that you can grab off store shelves for $15. And that makes every word that comes out after that statement utterly pointless. Not only all of that, it comes in the X-Shot skin line that in the near future will probably have a bunch of different aesthetic options that makes every other blaster on store shelves just look boring in comparison. But enough about that. The Fury X is available pretty much everywhere, including the likes of Walmart and Amazon, but I picked this guy up off a store shelf in Target. It comes with 40 half-length X-Shot darts, which weighing in about 0.92 grams are a little bit lighter than the competition, but definitely usable, and a single half-length X-Shot mag. 40 darts in a magazine for $15 is already MSRP from the likes of NERF, but then you get a free Pro Blaster on top of that! To put this in perspective, the Dart Zone Solo is the same price at $15, and that's just a single shot Pro Jolt. Hit like for that $15 price tag and subscribe if you think I need to do a mod video on this beast, because X-Shot really cooked with this one. Speaking of cooking, how about fresh delicious food delivered straight to your door that can be heated up in minutes with no hassle or prep? No longer must you be under the paralysis of choice or have to hunt down a list of ingredients. Cook Unity is literally the best. Just take the box out of the fridge, pop it into the microwave or oven, and you have food. There's hundreds of different meals to choose from with options for every kind of diet. These are all prepared by award-winning chefs, and if I'm being honest, they taste so far above and beyond any other service like this I've tried that it's going to be impossible to go back. And they know it too, because they're giving my viewers a 50% off your first order coupon with code Walcom S7 by clicking the link in the description. Everything showed up with this nice bag with ice in it and of course all of our food. After the first meals, my wife and I were already divvying up which ones we had to have. From Thai pineapple chicken fried rice to baked swai and Cajun pan sauce to a pork carnitas burrito, every single thing we had was not only brain dead easy to cook, but absolutely fantastic tasting. It can take as little as 2 minutes in the microwave to cook your food. These are pretty good portion sizes too, which I am a huge fan of, as that's my #1 complaint with every other meal service I've tried. So check out Cook Unity today, because with that 50% off coupon, not only is it an amazing deal for meals in general, but it's also so good and easy, I have a feeling you'll be sticking around. Check out their menu, and make sure to let me know in the comments what ones look the most delicious to you. Mag, we get our darts, we get our instructions that we don't need. Now we get to do the X-Shot thing where you unscrew all of these. And it's free. First off, this thing is light, at just over 1 pound 4 ounce with a mag fully loaded. Starting off at the front of the blaster, nothing special here at the muzzle, but confusingly enough, even though the X-Shot Fury X doesn't include any kind of muzzle stabilization, which at the velocity this thing is shooting at, you're gonna want to start to dabble with, it does fit the Worker or Dart Zone PCAR, or plastic centering auto rifling. But we'll have to test if that actually helps or hinders the blaster. The barrel is metal, which is mental for a $15 blaster, and this will bring up a really important use for this blaster we'll talk about towards the end. Right out of the barrel, there's a Picatinny rail here that'll fit things like airsoft or real steel accessories, and just above that is our front post for our sights and, whatever the heck this little unjamming 3-position switch lever is. The grip is a pretty standard affair, but it's also incredibly comfortable. Thicker at the base for the meat of your palm, yet thinner at the top so your trigger finger can easily reach the trigger and gives you a nice shelf for your thumb. Trigger is a very simple sliding design, but it works, it's nothing special. But what is special is the ambidextrous mag release. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but it is low profile and works well. There's also a switch located at the trigger guard that works as a trigger block safety. And that's usually an indication we're working with some stronger forces than usual. Speaking of mag release, the rear of the blaster is the magwell, and it only fits half-length mags. But it does work with the included X-Shot mag and every Talon style option I have available. The mags have stickers on them now, which pop pretty good and claim the 15-round capacity, but they're located at the point where you're not supposed to load any more darts. It can load more, but you might start having some feeding issues. There is a second mag release located right here, so you have the option of using either or. And just above the magwell, you have this single short Picatinny rail, which you could use for a sight or something, but this is also where you prime the blaster. This entire section is a gigantic priming slide that pulls all the way back, which then also lets your magazine pump a dart upwards while priming the entire blaster, and then pushing it forward loads a dart into the barrel and seals behind it, so that when you pull the trigger, it releases compressed air straight into the back of your foam dart, which then, via the path of least resistance, flings it out of the barrel. The prime is ratcheted, which means if you prime it back only a little way, it kind of gets stuck. You can't push it forward until it reaches the furthest position, and then you can push it back forward, which is both good because it prevents you from short stroking the prime, but bad because ratcheting is kind of you, and if something goes wrong, you'll have to master the little jam flurry switch thing. But that prime is also incredibly smooth and light. This blaster will be very usable even to the weakest of hands out there. This is the part of the video where I load the mag. The last thing to mention is that this blaster is capable of slam fire, so if you hold the trigger down, then prime the blaster, when you push the slide all the way forward, the blaster will automatically fire. This increases your rate of fire, but your accuracy will suffer. It's still a really neat feature to have, especially when the blaster is $15. Yeah, almost kind of easy to forget that. This is great and all, but how well does that performance title match the blaster? Well, out of the box using the included darts and magazine, this thing hits over 150 feet per second velocity-wise. To put that into perspective, the NERF Elite standard was around 70 feet per second, and NERF Rival was around 100 feet per second. This $15 blaster outdoes both of those, and also just dunks on NERF's new N-series releases as well. Keep in mind this blaster is designed for an older 14 and up audience opposed to the standard 8 and up crowd, and this does fall a bit short compared to newer Dart Zone options like the Adventure Force Nexus Pro and Aeon Pro X. But we'll talk about mod potential here in a little bit. Still, 150 FPS is a pretty standard velocity cap, which means just out of the box, the Fury X just became the most accessible stock primary in the entire hobby. You can go to a store, buy one of these things, and be ready to game, though you may just need a few more magazines. And unlike NERF and Dart Zone, the X-Shot stuff tends to go global really quickly. In fact, this thing showed up overseas in the UK months before it hit the store shelves here in the US. Accuracy is definitely serviceable, but if you had one of those Worker or Dart Zone P cars, can't be a coincidence that this blaster will take both of those things. You do get a bit of accuracy bonus with very little velocity drop. I did find, however, that the accuracy was still kind of questionable. There was still quite a bit of random variation between my shots. This could be saying that the blaster has too much air volume for the length of the barrel, and as the dart exits the muzzle, the burst of air is destabilizing it. This is usually fixed by using a B car, which vents out some of that excess air while spinning the dart, but because of the design of the blaster, the only one I have that fits is the Dart Zone B car with a little insert. This does drop the velocity of the blaster by 20 to 30 FPS, making it shoot more around 120, 130, and honestly, I didn't feel like it worked that well. More than usable in my opinion, but it would be better with a proper B car, which would require a few inches of exposed barrel. Despite all this, we gotta remember, this is a $15 Mag-fed Pro Performance blaster! It is more than enough for the price point and is absolutely the best starter blaster in the whole foam dart ecosystem, and that's what excites me the most. And also concerns me. The Fury X has a ton of utility out of the box. Remember that questionable Picatinny rail on the Prime? Well, if you put a Picatinny optic on there, real steel enthusiasts know that you can actually use that optic as leverage to prime your blaster. So that opens up the ability to one-hand the entire Fury X. Better yet, put a Picatinny sling mount on there, huge mistake not including that on the blaster by default X-Shot, and apply a sling, and you can use that sling to prime the slide back, then press it against your body to push the slide forward and chamber a dart, and then you have a really nice and quick one-handed sidearm. That is seriously a huge feature, and even if you were on the fence about the Fury X because you didn't immediately have a need for it, that application might just push you over the edge. This also means that technically you could dual wield these things. But just like its sister blaster, the X-Shot Longshot, modding the X-Shot Fury X requires very little effort. 2 screws hold in these plastic pins, which then allows you to remove the whole front end, and then 4 more identical screws that you can access through these sides allows you to remove the entire priming block and access the main power spring. There is definitely going to be upgrade potential here, but it's a weaker, shorter spring than what we had with the Longshot, so some testing will be required. Getting the Fury X to a minimum of 200 feet per second should be entirely possible, and who knows where it will go past that. Even better, if we go and disassemble the whole blaster, we can see that X-Shot learned from their past mistakes with the plunger tube of the Longshot cracking and breaking, and used a completely different material. I have fired these things hundreds of times and have yet to have a single jam with fresh-ish darts, let alone anything breaking. $15 is already at that price point where even if you only had a tepid interest in the Fury X, you could pick one up and not risk a whole lot. But the fact that the blaster is super solid with a ton of value packed in for such a low price elevates it to the absolute highest recommendation I can ever give anything on this channel. Right now, the Fury X is triple S god tier unbeatable. Sure, you might have blasters that are more expensive, hit harder, and are more accurate and so forth, but this blaster isn't for you. It's for the new person that sees this kind of thing on store shelves, has no idea foam darts are capable of this level of performance, and just got introduced to a whole new world. The Fury X has the potential to impart the biggest growth this hobby has seen, and that's without any fanfare except for idiots on the internet like myself. But let's take this one step further. It's so inexpensive that it begs to question. It has a metal barrel, spring, plunger tube, basically everything you could need. Yeah, it doesn't have the pump action that the X-Shot Longshot has, and undoubtedly 3D printed pump action kits will be fitted to this blaster as more people get their hands on it. But what about creating an entirely new blaster that uses the Fury X as a hardware kit? Much like what Domoshevsky has done with the X-Shot Micro with his variety of 3D printed reshells that only use the Micro as a hardware kit, the same idea could be applied to the Fury X. This is 2 Micros, and yet it turns it into a double-barreled shotgun with just a couple of 3D printed pieces, but keep in mind, the only part of this that was used as hardware was the Micro. Everything else is 3D printed, and that's a massive boost in what the Micro can do. Even like this little guy, which is a Micro, but now you can one-hand prime it because it's hammer action. And these are just 2 of the very many options Domoshevsky has made. I'll have a link down to his Etsy if you want to pick some of these up, and a link to the 3D printers I use if you want to print out some of your own. Now imagine all of that with the Fury X. If I had to wish list one build, I 100% want somebody to design a body that's basically a double Fury X alternator from Titanfall, since I'm already thinking of pinning 2 of these things together but fitting them on a single grip, just like what I did in the old days. I feel like the hobby doesn't do this enough, but I also feel like the hobby has never had such an easily accessible, fully featured blaster before. The Fury X is one of the best blasters we have ever gotten, and maybe will ever get. This takes what the Nexus Pro originally did for our hobby to the extreme, giving you a cool, powerful, compact, fully featured blaster for a price the likes of NERF will never even be able to compete with. Even Dart Zone is going to struggle to give us what the Fury X gives, and it's an incredibly well thought out product that begs to question how X-Shot even makes money on it. It's not perfect. The lack of a sling loop on the slide, the lack of a Picatinny rail in the front for an optic when they could have easily added that, the design of the mag release above the main grip are sharp and slick and pretty hard on my thumb, and the fact that these mags aren't true Talon magazines so your mileage will vary. Yeah, these are all some minor annoyances. But the biggest problem is that we've hit rock bottom. We pretty much can't go lower. The Fury X is so inexpensive and so feature-rich that it cuts into my recommendation for pretty much everything, including the X-Shot Longshot, let alone a bunch of other blasters out there. You only need 1 dart to tag somebody out, so anything that can competently provide that is a viable blaster option for any game. Sure, this doesn't cover competitive players that can pay hundreds of dollars for a custom blaster that is specifically made for competitive play, but for everybody else, the Fury X is going to be tough to beat. And even then, you might be able to use this thing for competitive play if you wanted. Yeah, your Nexus Pro X does a lot for a $50 price tag and is absolutely a great blaster, but do you need it over the Fury X? For most people, the answer is going to be no. Just like how the original Nexus Pro became the default standard overnight, the Fury X lowers that barrier for entry even more, and it's definitely going to be felt throughout the hobby's obviously high recommendations from the past suddenly become harder sells due to just how good the Fury X is, but time will tell. X-Shot, you're on fire right now! Don't screw this up! The Fury X is worth its weight in gold.